I thought the whole point of Mr. Beast as a content creator was that his videos were entertaining and, more to the point, actually had fun games. It seems like in the first 2 episodes of Beast Games, we've replaced all of those fun competitions with a Zoomer version of the Prisoner's Dilemma, except in this case the losing prisoner sobs on national television because they can no longer free their children from the crushing burden of poverty. Episode 2 of Beast Games, if you haven't seen my review of episode 1, click here, has seemingly doubled the psychological torture that we saw in the first episode.
Good. Twice the pride, double the fall.
And I'm not joking. Half of the so-called games we're going to be discussing in this video are barely even games. Now, I'm not naive. I know, or at least I'm expecting, that at some point this game show will include actual games. I know, that's a lot to ask, but don't worry. This episode has given me plenty of assurance that the underlying psychological torment will be a constant fixture of every episode moving forward. But what else can you expect when you watch a reality show hosted by Willy Wonka if Willy Wonka was significantly more evil and made significantly worse chocolate? Actually, I realize I'm just describing Johnny Depp's portrayal of Willy Wonka, so, you know, Timothy Chalamet, Gene Wilder, you guys are both good. The only character in the Wonkaverse that I would rank above you would have to be the Unknown.
What is that? It's the Unknown.
Alright, enough procrastinating. If I keep making jokes, I don't have to watch the show, right? Right? Knock knock. Who's there? Oh, it's you, making me watch and review the most sociopathic reality television show currently on television. Right then. Let's get after it. My name is Patrick, but my friends call me Pat. If you enjoy my videos and enjoy my content, please like and comment on this video. It helps get this out to more people, and I super duper appreciate it. I am also on social media. Usernames there. Links down below in the description. Heart back by popular demand. When we last left off, there were a bunch of people taking bribes to leave the competition at the expense of eliminating others, who were then thrown down chutes into the abyss. Expect similar content to that today. Apparently, in the last 24 hours, the remaining 493 contestants have all moved into Beast City and become fast friends. And I say the word apparently with intention, because we're told this in about 1 minute of Mr. Beast's narration, and we're just expected to take him at his word. And no offense to Mr. Beast, but I don't trust a man who has the phenotype of a 19th century snake oil salesman who absolutely has to get out of town quickly after he's run his scam. And I've been harsh on the guy, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt in assuming that one of the other reasons he needs to leave town is because he's had a romp in the hay with one of the village women, you know, while her husband was working in the oil fields. This is really only half compliment though, because it implies he has the morals of an alley cat and is really just a skullduggerous scallywag to keep up the 19th century part of this bit, even though the first half of that insult was unironically said by the outgoing president of the United States. But I do find the creative decision to not highlight any of these 24 hours outside of like 2 talking heads to be an interesting one, because what is at the heart of a great reality television show? Great reality television characters. People. And it's hard to get to know these people when the show spends most of its runtime on Mr. Beast talking or on slow motion shots of people sobbing or wailing in distress. Harder still when there are nearly 500 people on the cast. That being said, I do want to note that in the real life recreation of Squid Game, at this point in the season, we had already met multiple standout characters who would become a fixture of the show, but granted, that show was not burdened with having to split screen time with a guy named Carl. He works a camera. This is a fundamental issue with the show. The large cast is exclusively a net negative for the show. If your objective in casting 2,000 and then 1,000 people was to win a Guinness World Record, congratulations, you have achieved that feat. But if your goal was to make a season of great reality television and 2 episodes in, the only character I know is Beardy, you've probably failed.
That is Beardy.
Alright, time to get to the action. But first, let's take a look at how Mr. Beast describes his aforementioned very large cast.
Oh my gosh, it's like a zombie horde's coming at me.
I'm not going to mention every time the show sees fit to dehumanize the contestants, because if I did, this video would be longer than the actual TV episode, because there would also have to be clips of me saying, wow, isn't this so disturbing? Because wow, isn't this so disturbing? But I am going to highlight moments when the dehumanization is particularly funny in a sad way, and I think the zombie comment perfectly fits the criteria. Today's episode will have 4 different games as we try to cut the cast in half again after we just did the same thing last episode. And so just doing the math for you, at this rate, by the time we reach the finale, the last 0.97656th of a person will have that $5 million grand prize all to themselves, minus, probably a few appendages to make the fraction work. After the first 3 minutes, Mr. Beast cuts a little promo to get us excited for the rest of the episode, and dear viewer, how do you think he does that?
But what they don't realize is just how brutal this episode will get.
No, open the door.
We can't be having friendships right now. It's us against them.
Say it with me, folks. The cruelty is the point. Again, you really have to have a detached attitude to enjoy this type of content, this type of suffering put on screen and edited and cut into an episode of television. One of the most frequent comments I saw in the last video was, I don't even feel bad for these people, they signed up for it, which, thank you for that totally inconsequential statement of fact, idiot. Everyone on Squid Game signed up for it. Does that make the actions of the game makers right? Katniss Everdeen volunteered to be in the Hunger Games, so I don't feel bad for that bitch. Like, when she's getting knives thrown at her, she knew what she signed up for. Sure, I get it, the people in Beast Games actually get to walk away from the competition, although according to the lawsuits, some of them may be doing it with a broken bone or two, and they do get paid, although according to the lawsuits, some people report having not gotten paid, and to get paid, you have to waive away any ability to sue the production company, but sure, it's better than Squid Games, except Squid Game is actually fictional. It is not a real-life model of how to run a reality competition show, and I realize I said Squid Games again. A lot of people commented on that. My bad. All of the competitions today will be taking place inside Beast City, which perhaps fittingly, reminds me of those complexes they build in Saudi Arabia for American defense contractors. A little slice of Americana with walls all around it. Joking aside though, this was filmed in Toronto.
Go back to Toronto! I'm from Winnipeg, you idiot!
I guess it's kind of relevant, but I mostly just wanted an excuse to play the Jericho clip. I'm sorry. Today's first game takes place on the top floor of Nakatomi Beast's tower. Okay, that one's a bit of a reach, but I think it's good. 2 teams of people will be catching balls dropped one by one into an erratic maze on top of their heads with tons of different holes. But if any single ball hits the floor, the entire 60-ish person team will be eliminated. And I'm noticing early on some fascinating conflicts in the values that the show says it believes and the values that the show actually demonstrates. On the one hand, it is hard to argue against the fact that Beast Games has a very strict individualist ideology, one that champions selfishness, both in terms of what is actually being said by the host, the co-hosts, and the contestants, what is being included in the episode, and the actual designs of the games themselves. To a degree, this is true of every reality competition show where there can be only one winner and there is only one grand prize, as America's least favorite Big Brother bully, Daniel Durston, was so keen to remind us.
Remember, you all can't split the check. Play for yourselves.
Oh, Daniel, they know that already. They just all hate you. But there's also an element of collectivism, of a Roman-style value system where there is a Roman-style collective punishment, where the term decimate actually comes from. After losing a battle, so goes the history, 1/10 of the legion would be killed by the other 9/10.
The legate then ordered 1/10 of his own force be killed by the other 9/10. And you thought your boss was a pain.
And here in Beast Games, 59 people will go home because of the actions of 1. And is there a profound ideological message to that? Probably not. This show is just cheap and they have to get rid of hundreds of people in a single episode. But still. And unironically, one could argue that the show is espousing the values of Maoism in the very next challenge. So stay tuned for that, because we may be seeing some socialism with Mr. Beast characteristics. And if you'll notice, the Squid Game ripoff henchmen have dozens and dozens of balls. Do not laugh at that sentence, we're all mature here, okay? So that begs the question, how long do you think this game is going to last for? 10 balls, 20 balls, 40 balls, 50 balls, 60 balls? If your answer was 4, you're correct. But really, actually, the answer is 1. And if you guessed correctly, well, I'm not Mr. Beast. I can't give you any money, but I can give you the satisfaction of a job well done. Actually, I can't give you that either, but I can give you an entertaining YouTube video, and I hope I'm in the process of doing that as we speak. So yes, the game is over after just 4 balls aside, except as I mentioned, it's really over after the first ball drops. Yep. One team literally didn't even catch the very first ball, but it was missed by production, and it was only reviewed after they had already eliminated the other team who dropped the 4th ball. I'm not even gonna make a joke here. I'm just gonna say this is so pathetic. This cannot be happening on a reality television show with a budget of $100 million. It just can't. Your production staff cannot be messing up like this in the most basic way. I've worked on multiple amateur reality television productions when I was in college, and if we, the production staff, had declared one team the winner only to later say, actually JK, never mind, the other team won, we would have been mortified. That was college. This is Amazon Prime and Mr. fucking Beast.
We did not catch it in the moment because the guards did not have a line of sight.
And Mr. Beast tries to cope with it by saying, well, like, thanks to our replay room, we're never gonna make the wrong decision. We check everything. You know what's infinitely better and infinitely more professional than getting it right the second time? Getting it right the first time. It's just laughable and frankly inexcusable for a fuck up of this magnitude to be happening on episode 2. And all my comments that I made in the first video about the incompetence of the production staff are aging like fine wine. And speaking of wine, how about all these losers crying because their chances of escaping poverty have been dashed because one guy dropped a ball? Remember, you can't feel bad for them because a couple YouTube commenters reminded you that they signed up for this. The only thing more bleak than this show has been seeing the fan response. It does not spark joy. All right, time to get into game 2. I'm just kidding, of course. It is not a game. It is yet another self-sacrifice, self-elimination, psychological torture, social experiment. The 2 teams have 30 minutes to convince as many people on their own team to self-eliminate. And at the end of the 30 minutes, the team with the fewest people who have self-eliminated will all be eliminated. Stop me if you've heard this one before. I know it's probably sounding very similar by now. There's also a giant cover so you can't see the other team, and there's a telephone that you can use to call the other team and strategize or try to manipulate them in some strange fashion. And you know what, Jimmy? If I can call you that, I'm really gonna knock you for your lack of inventiveness here. If you're gonna force your cast into playing these games that aren't really games to psychologically torment them, why don't you just go all out? Make the teams build shrines for you. The team with the worst shrine gets thrown down a trap door. Or how about this? The teams compete to give you a sacrifice of livestock and spices, and team with the worst offering gets sacrificed at the top of Beast City Tower like the Mayans did in Apocalypto. Or how about this? How about you have your contestants build you a giant pyramid and then the losers can just be interred inside your tomb, just like how the ancient pharaohs used to be buried with all their underlings. I'm just saying, if we're gonna torture these people, how about we torture these people, right? You can even have them build a pyramid for the ultimate winner. And I will note here, again, the editing is laughably bad. And here's a piece of feedback to the crack team over at Mr. Beast and to the one YouTube commenter who said that the episode was, quote, obviously high budget and damn well cut. If you are not going to edit a sequence chronologically, it is a good idea not to place a giant clock in the middle of your set. In this sequence, we see the clock going from 16 minutes magically back to 29 minutes. But yeah, random YouTube commenter, this show is obviously high budget and damn well cut, isn't it? I do not claim to be an expert, but you Mr. Beast fanboys do not have the faintest clue about what you're talking about. Do yourselves a favor, take an editing class. No, read a book. No, how about you watch a 10-minute YouTube video on the conventions of editing and understand every area that this show falls flat. Okay, got that out of my system, let's move on. Let's take a look at the strategy that some of the contestants are using to convince others to self-eliminate.
At any point in this process, have you had that thought, I don't think I can make it all the way to episode 10? If you have had that thought, now's the time not to lie to yourself anymore.
I don't know what's more sad, that speech or the fact that immediately after he says it, somebody decides to quit. Meaning that the speech worked. But remember how I promised you some Mr. Beast Maoism earlier? Well, this entire game would make a certain Chinese leader with a receding hairline very happy.
He really sacrificed himself for the greater good.
A sacrifice for the greater good, huh? You know, that message has actually come up a couple times throughout Beast Games, and also in Mao's Little Red Book, and it would be enough to inject a little bit of socialism into the show if the entire show was not, obviously, a hyper-individualistic, hyper-capitalistic competition for complete conquest. Although if we are going to look at the show as possibly having been influenced by the late great Chinese leader, the very next competition in Beast Games is the contestants trying to make as much steel in backyard furnaces as possible, and trying to purge as many opponents of the party as possible following the 100 Flowers campaign, so there might be more to this Mao theory than meets the eye.
我憨憨抱歉对我的错误。
Eventually, one team wins and is expunged from the historical record, just like Stalin and his homie in that one picture. And speaking of a maniac with a cult of personality, but who also did have friends, let's talk about the co-hosts of the show. For the most part, they are the cinematic equivalent of watching paint dry and add almost nothing to the show. Mr. Beast, for his part, at least plays the role of an insane villain, but what did the co-host really bring to the table?
If this was me up there, I'm going first, guaranteeing a point, right? Yeah. Guaranteeing, yeah.
And I think it's very telling that despite the fact that the show has hundreds of cameras, they've chosen not to place a single one in front of the co-hosts. They're probably being filmed with a hidden camera in a tissue box in case one of the contestants tries to seek a little privacy before they start sobbing. And here's a challenge that the producers couldn't mess up the judging if they tried, and one that is actually somewhat skill-based: giant beer pong. One by one, people will take turns throwing balls into a giant cup.
I don't think there's any strategy to this actually at all.
Okay, so clearly they don't agree with me that there's any skill to this at all, but I would much rather have the fate in my own hands of throwing a ball into a cup rather than have to yell and cry at my fellow teammates until one of them happens to break and leave, so that I may have the honor of playing on in Beast Games. And the way this is scored, again, there are two teams, and when you score a point, it counts for the team, and team with the most points at the end wins. So finally, a good, fair and there's a twist. And there is a twist to add an element of psychological torture. About halfway through the challenge, they introduce a golden cup, and if you use your ball and you get it through the golden cup, you will get $250,000.
Just when I thought I was out, you pulled me back in with another twist to propagate human suffering.
That was a bad Pacino, I apologize, although it's really only the second worst thing to happen to Al Pacino. The first, obviously, was him starring in Jack and Jill.
What's my name? Dunkachino! Dunkachino!
The golden ball twist, though, is really not used by too many players, because after you throw the ball into the golden cup, you'd kind of just have to awkwardly walk back to all your teammates, and they'd be like, dude, you know, what are you doing? Although, one guy does try. He was clearly aiming for the golden cup, even if he eventually tries to deny it, but, like, they're close enough together that there's almost plausible deniability, even though my man was definitely aiming for that golden cup. And you know, sometimes you gotta shoot your shot. Literally. This challenge quickly becomes unwatchable, though, because the pink team pretty early on develops a multi-point lead that they just never relinquish, causing about half the challenge to be enveloped by a sense of overwhelming dread by the trailing team. And there was a truly great moment before the pink team does go on to win, where we see their slow-motion cheering contrasted with somebody sobbing in the fetal position. And I would get upset about this, or I'd maybe even get sad, but according to one commenter, I'm, quote, thinking about it too far, like it's for entertaining. Thank you. I didn't realize that. Sub on, losers. It's for entertaining. I'm being entertained by your suffering. Yeah. Now look, a lot of people call me negative or a hater, but I prefer to think of it as me calling it like I see it. Here, there is one moment, one tiny, tiny moment where Mr. Beast does demonstrate an iota of charisma. The white team needs to sink 5 shots back to back to back to back to back in order to stay in the competition, and Mr. Beast interviews the person about to take a shot before he takes the shot, and Mr. Beast's response, short and curt, was funny.
Victory!
All right, we'll see.
Yeah, that one really got me because, yeah, it's a guy who's clearly delusional, coping with the fact he's gonna lose his chance at $5 million. And yeah, Mr. Beast, yeah, random guy, I guess we'll see. I guess the seeing is kind of what we're here to do, isn't it? Mr. Beast would be a lot more successful if he barely said anything. If he was like that one guy on the Pat McAfee show who just never talks. If he almost said nothing, he would be a infinitely more interesting host.
Talk less. What? Smile more.
But of course, the guy who said he was going to experience victory experiences defeat. He misses the shot by a mile and his entire team is eliminated. Remaining contestants did get an attempt to try to get their ball in the Golden Cup, which I felt showed integrity on the show's part, even if, you know, the show is being sued over allegations that they failed to prevent sexual harassment, sent contestants to the hospital, and didn't provide clean underwear to people. So there's that, I guess. Today's final challenge is admittedly low effort, but I love it anyway. Trivia! The 60-person teams are divided into groups of 4, and then the groups of 4 from each different team compete head-to-head against each other to answer trivia questions. Does it make for good television? No. Is it a creative concept? No. Did I personally enjoy it? I mean, listen, you're talking to somebody who one day wants to be on Celebrity Jeopardy, so what do you think my answer is? It's not an ego thing, it's not a matter of being called a celebrity, far from it. I just think the questions on Celebrity Jeopardy play a little bit more to my strengths. And my ultimate goal, becoming a Curtis Connor, Drew Gooden, Danny Gonzalez, who you've all said I kind of look like to your YouTuber, if I'm reaching that peak, then I think I'll have successfully qualified for the D-list fame necessary to be cast on Celebrity Jeopardy. Most of the challenge gets edited out, but one of the moments that does make it to the final episode is a teacher on one of the 4 teams meeting Mr. Beast and becoming so infatuated / almost even vaguely horny for him that she leads her team to get the answer wrong, despite the question literally being in her curriculum. The question is, which Roman numeral represents the number 100? I'll give you a second to answer, or you can just pause. The answer is C. The other team gets it right. And what does the team with the teacher guess? They guess X. They guess X. Oh, that's brutal. It's just a bad guess from a trivia perspective. Like, okay, sure, you know, many people, you know, we're not using Roman numerals to represent 100, but guess, you know, M for mill, maybe you think it's 100, whatever. Maybe H for 100. Really, almost any other letter would have been a better guess than X, I, or V, the 3 Roman numerals that most people have seen on a regular basis. You're an educator. You know what? Let's bring back everything we were just talking about around decimation, because this team deserves it for making an error involving the number 10. I'm kidding, obviously, because your humiliation and the subsequent monetization of said humiliation alongside your sadness is a pretty distressing punishment in the modern social media age. But we're not done yet, as the impact font informs us that there are now 242 contestants remaining. And by the way, if you thought that my font criticisms were irrelevant or inaccurate, congratulations, you're just objectively wrong. There's really no other way to say it. It's not a professional font used by a professional show. It's used by YouTubers, and it's on photos of grumpy cats. Not exactly a serious font, being used by not exactly serious people.
But you are not serious people.
Today's final challenge has the 4 winning teams competing against each other and each selecting a captain. This captain will be offered a bribe, and if they accept the bribe, their entire team will be eliminated. Mr. Beast kindly outlines for us what a successful captain would hypothetically look like.
I need you to pick someone incredibly trustworthy that won't bow under the pressure of large, giant piles of money.
There's something to be said about just how this show talks about money, and I know we've hinted at it a little bit, but I'm sure if you all keep making me watch this show, we'll have an abundance of time to talk about it. Please like the video if you want to facilitate my suffering for your entertainment. See, wait, it's kind of a microcosm of the show, except I'm not allegedly breaking any limbs and being sent to the hospital. Allegedly. Oh. We then see a quick sequence of people campaigning for each other and getting selected. We see Beardy get selected. We see a professional wrestler named Twana get selected. And we get to see the most sketchy looking Italian-American coded man also get selected. Personally, how I would have voted, I would not have voted for somebody who easily looks like they could have been on the cast of Goodfellas, but that's just me. That's just my bias speaking. We then see another guy called Harrison talking about how he wouldn't be able to be bought because he is a veteran and he does van life, like he lives in his van, causing it to be misinterpreted by some of the other people on that team.
You say he's living out of his car?
Guys, he's not homeless, okay?
He lives in a car.
That's his choice.
While he seems like a trustworthy guy just based on a quick look, I don't know if the most successful sales pitch for picking you as a captain who won't take a bribe is talking about how you currently live in your car. I mean, it's a nice car, don't get me wrong, I'm sure it's a car with amenities, but in the grand scheme of life, I think the average house probably beats the average car. To the best of my knowledge, a 2021 Toyota Camry doesn't have indoor plumbing. Although I did read recently that the Cybertruck just got a software update that now allows you to fling your excrement at lowly pedestrians like me who haven't paid Elon $15 a month for his anti-feces subscription service. Mr. Beast gives us another cute little villain monologue, which I will speed up both because it is too long and because it will be funny.
Can you find someone on your team that money can't buy? You are crazy. You really need to. You need to chill. They will be tempted with an insane amount of money. Whatever you're thinking, it is going to be higher than that. They're going to tell you they won't crash, but we will find that breaking point. Okay, all right.
Not sure what's so crazy about this speech because it's frankly rather tame compared to some of the other clips we've showed of the show, but whatever. And he also says whatever amount you think it'll be higher, which for me personally was wrong. I was thinking it would max out at around $2 million, and it ultimately maxes out around $1 million, so boo. But the catch here is that if none of the 4 captains take the $1 million bribe, every single person on the show will get to stay another episode, including the captains. So it's not a case of like, it's you or me, whatever, because that's obviously an obvious decision. So this is another test of the show's central theme. How far will you go to be rewarded for pure, unadulterated greed at the expense of others? Because the show, at every turn, wants you to do that. And that's episode 2, because in this episode, we don't actually get to see who takes the bribe or not. So that's gonna do it for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I'm just kidding, of course. I'm gonna tell you what happens, because I trust you, the viewer of my YouTube channel, that you're gonna watch the next episode of this show that I do, just as Mr. Beast, the producer of the reality show, should have trusted his audience a little bit more. None of the 4 captains take the $1 million bribe. Everybody is safe. Yay! A teeny tiny, infinitesimally small morsel of faith in humanity has been restored. I'd like to cling to this hope because I know when I watch episode 3, I will simply not have any left. Episode 3 is literally called The Solitary Experiment, and let me be the bearer of bad news that the UN considers solitary confinement as its practice in the US to be a violation of human rights. So I'm just thrilled to see what Beast Games is gonna do with it. I'm just hoping that through all this psychological torture song and dance, eventually we can get to a skill-based competition, maybe? Not that that's gonna make the show any more enjoyable, really. It's just gonna make it a different form of gut-wrenching. It's just gonna make me feel like I'm watching brain rot instead of watching people actively claw at each other like starving mice. I'm hoping at some point that the show focuses on specific characters, like every single reality television show has since the genre was conceived. And at some point I'd love for the show to actually start behaving like a television show instead of a very long YouTube video. If you guys are making me watch this, I'm going to maintain my optimism. Maybe that's my issue, because as the Buddha said, expect nothing and you'll always be pleasantly surprised. Well, for this channel, I always expect quality programming, and I'm almost always disappointed. But that's gonna do it for me, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you've enjoyed it, please leave a like, please comment. It helps get this video out to more people, which super duper helps me out. Let me know down below what you think about the show. Nice rhyming thing we did there. Am I being too harsh? Are you gonna leave more hate comments? Leave some more hate comments. I'd love for some more material for the next episode. What do you think about how this episode was conducted? Was it better or worse than the first one? Can it go downhill from here? Probably so. Don't ever think that things can't get any worse, because they almost always can. And as always, my name is Patrick, but my friends call me Pat, and I'll see you for the next one.